G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated Podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Alright, just a little disclaimer at the start of this episode. Don't worry, this is not about the content. It's about the quality of my voice at present. You may be able to hear through this recording that I'm a little bit croaky, and that's because I've been a little bit sick the last few days. I wanted to get a podcast episode out a little bit earlier than I have for this one, but the voice was just not there. But, you know, I'm sick of waiting around for it to recover. I've got some head cold, it's nothing major, so I'm just going to go through and push on anyway. So apologies if my voice is a little bit more, annoying than normal or nasally than normal. I always think I've got a nasally voice, so as you can imagine, my inner critic currently is very much hammering me about the fact that I will be sounding nasally in this recording, but I don't care. Inner critic, it doesn't matter. We're going to press on anyway. So today's episode is about social anxiety and how it manifests itself in me. So this is an example, or this episode I'm going to go through an example that's happening in real time right now of where my social anxiety has gotten in the way of doing the things that I want to do. So today is the final home game of the season for my mighty Newcastle Knights in the National Rugby League here in Australia. The mighty Knights that I must admit have not gone very good this season. It's been a very, very disappointing season. I'm not sure if the club are aware of the antidepressant effects that a victory has on me, but they must not be they don't care because there haven't been many victories this year. But no, I am joking because I don't mind. I don't care. Well, obviously I want us to win, but I'm not one of those sort of supporters, fair weather supporter. Unfortunately, the Newcastle Knights, we have not performed for many years now, and my commitment has been unwavering. But the problem that does occur from time to time, and it's certainly occurred this season, I started off the season really well. I was going to all the games. I went to the trial games. I went to away games. I drove to the Gold Coast and watched us get flogged up there and wasted all my petrol money on that. No, that was a good trip. But we did get beaten quite convincingly, which was disappointing. But I've been to Sydney a few times for some away games and some home games as well. But the last couple of rounds, the last couple of weeks, or even the last probably month or two, I haven't really been attending the games like I normally would. And that is because of this chronic social anxiety that I get that has reared its ugly head the last little bit, and it's rendered my ability to go to the Knights games like I want to and like I should. This is a big part of my identity. For those that don't know, I go to the games and I have a banner, Pride of the Hunter, because Newcastle, for those that don't know, is in the Hunter region here in New South Wales, Australia. And I take the banner to the games, and I'm quite, I guess I'm quite well known as I'm a bit of an infamous supporter. I'm very loud from where I sit. That's why I've got to keep the vocal cords, going well, because, I've got to tell the referee that the opposition, today being the Brisbane Broncos, that the opposition is offside, because for some unknown reason, the referees don't like to blow penalties for us. So, someone's got to tell the referee that the opposition are not following the rules like they should be, and I'm more than happy to be that person. So that's why it's so imperative that my vocal cords, forget the podcast, it's the yelling from the stands, the grandstands, that's why I need to look after my voice. But in all seriousness though, me being a Newcastle Knights supporter is a huge thing. It's a huge part of what I do, of who I see myself as and what I enjoy and what really gets me going, it's being a Knights supporter. I'm a very passionate supporter. I love the club. I love the Newcastle Knights. I love the region, Newcastle and the Hunter. And if you've listened to the podcast long enough, you would know that. And I will continue to push how wonderful Newcastle is, because it is truly God's country. But, the club represents the region and the city and us Novocastrians, the population of Newcastle. And, I want to see our team do well. And I get very, parochial about the team and the club, when we take on, teams from Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne. And, it's like, we're the underdogs in a lot of ways, and you want to stick it to the big guns. And for a while, a couple of years ago, we were the big guns when we had players like Andrew Johns and Danny Badiris. The Newcastle Knights were formidable, but unfortunately, it's been a long time since we've had any success like that. But the problem is, and back to the main point of this episode, is that the social anxiety that I have, that is chronic. I talk about my anxiety, how it's there all the time, and often I'm referring more to the generalised anxiety component of things. But don't get me wrong, the social anxiety is a huge part of this as well. And when I talk about my diminished social capacity and that my social capacity battery's on zero and stuff, that's because I get socially anxious, and all the energy that burns up, is a reason why I need to try and find a way to overcome this. But I need to overcome it too and keep it at bay, because I need to do the things that make my life worth living. And I know that sounds like a heavy statement, and I guess it is, but, me being a Newcastle Knights supporter is one of those reasons when things are not going very good, that I think to myself, we've just got to hold on, like life's all right. There's some good things, and following rugby league and the Knights is one of those good things, even though the results may not quite be in line with not so much my expectations. They are in line with my expectations, but I guess not so much my hope and wishes. But the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is because currently the NRLW, the women's team, is playing Brisbane, because the game is here at home here in Newcastle. Did I mention that? Last home game of the season, which is always a big affair. It's sold out. The game is sold out. And right now the women are playing the Brisbane Broncos, who are coming top of the table. And unfortunately, we're getting beaten. But our women's team is quite a handy side, don't get me wrong. And I love watching the women's play too. It's a great game, the women's game it is. And then the men kick off at 3 p.m, which is an hour away. Now, I should be at the ground now, I should get there when the gates open, and that's usually what I try and do. And I try and do that because I get so stressed out that I'm not going to get me seat, and, there's going to be lineups, I'm going to miss kickoff and all that. Again, it's the anxiety garbage that just dictates everything. But I do try and get there as early as I can, because also, as we know, my ADHD renders my ability to be organised and timely. It severely hampers my ability to be on time. So I've got to go above and beyond to make sure that because there have been so many games I've walked in as we're kicking off, and I'm just like I'm freaking out, like I'm looking for a place to sit. I'm looking for me mates or whoever I'm going to the game with, me family. And, I'm freaking out, and the game's already on, and, the opposition just scored a try and I haven't even found my seat yet. And, it just stresses me out so much, and it ruins the experience often. So I really try to avoid that. But the problem is, at the moment, my social anxiety and my dwindling social capacity is such that I don't think I'll be able to make the game today, the men's game today. And as I said, the women's, that game is almost over, and I should be there for that as well. And this is not good. This is another example, a real world example of how these mental illnesses like to dictate terms and dictate, how our lives are lived. And I don't like it, because I like going to these games. I like, revving everyone up in the crowd and being, to be honest, the centre of attention in many ways, and being a big part of the entertainment. I like the idea that I'm quite infamous, and that people know my banner, the Pride of the Hunter banner. And it's very depressing for me when I can't meet well, I'm not going to say obligations because that sounds like it's a job, and it's certainly not a job. It's more than that. But that's what I should be doing. Elliot Waters should be going to Newcastle Knights games, win, lose or draw, rain, hail or shine. It shouldn't matter. I should be at all the games, giving it my all, so the team hopefully does as well, because that's what I do. That is what Elliot Waters does. There's also the fact that, I'm sort of known for it and stuff, but forget all that. Internally for me, I get great joy out of going to these games, and that's why I get really frustrated when I'm in these moods where I struggle to be able to handle, the sensory overload that admittedly a sold out McDonald Jones Stadium does. Because it's not, even when I'm going well, the games, it's still a tough environment for me because there's a lot going on, there's a lot of bright lights and there's 30,000 people, sitting around me and stuff, like even if my social anxiety isn't totally peaking, like just the fact that I'm autistic and, stuff like that, and, just the sensory overload, like there's a lot going on. It's a very loud, bright, vibrant environment, and I'm not always cut out for that, naturally, and I have to go above and beyond again to sort of overcome that. But then when I am able to overcome it, I get great enjoyment out of the experience. And it's also very empowering because I know that every time I go to a game and give it my all, that I'm pushing back against these mental illnesses that do not want me going and want me staying at home. But unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen today. Because as we know, listening to the more recent episodes, that my social capacity is dwindling big time. And I think a big part of that is because of my work and the fact that I'm so customer focused and customer facing and, a lot of team members and all that. And we get to the weekend like it is now and I'm zonked, you know what I mean? Like, it's not all bad news. Last night, for example, I went out with some friends just to the pub and had my first drink, my first alcoholic beverage in 5 weeks. It was a Kilkenny. So hello to all of the Irish listeners out there. I love Kilkenny. It's a great beer. It's like a milkshake. It's just beautiful. I only had one though. I drove, only had one. Nothing silly. There was no abusing anything. It was just a really good sit down, catch up, and talk about how things are going. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. But even that experience, there's a social capacity cost. There's an energy output that is inherent in it, obviously, and that's the case for everyone, but obviously for people who don't have much capacity to begin with, even catching up with friends can be a big deal. And it was a big deal, like I remember I left, I was like, whoa, that was a big couple of hours, but man, that was fun. I loved it. I enjoyed it so much. That was great. But I think there's a bit of a hangover effect, not from drinking, but a social hangover effect that is unfortunately doing its thing here today. And I think that's why I don't think I'll be able to make the game. Which because, I've got people that I was going to meet there and sit with. And again, there's that social element. Obviously 3,000 people aren't all going to be talking to me, but the people I go with will be. And I don't know. I just don't know if I've got it. I just don't know if I've got it today, which is pretty annoying too, because I don't know, some of you may be listening to the podcast here today for the first time. I should have mentioned this at the start of the episode when people were still hooked in. So if you're still listening, thank you for sticking through, even though my voice I can hear is getting worse and worse as I keep babbling on. But see, I knew... me being strategic, I love putting my podcast posters up around Newcastle. I've mentioned this before on the show. I have this autistic, I think, fixation. I really, really enjoy driving around, usually late at night on my own, with my staple gun and a whole wad of posters that I make, and I put them on every telegraph pole, every power pole in Newcastle, and it's everywhere, like for promotion, but I don't know, there's some joy I get out of it. I know it's a bit weird probably, and people probably see these posters and go, what is this guy doing? What is wrong with this bloke? And to those people I say, listen to the bloody show and then you'll find out. But I'm very content just driving around singing Oasis and AC/DC songs and pulling over and putting up posters with my staple gun. I love it. And I put up last night a lot of posters around McDonald Jones Stadium because I knew that the game was going to be a sellout and there'll be a lot of people hanging around the stadium. So there's a lot of podcast posters up around the stadium right now. So if you are a first-time listener because you've seen the posters hanging up around the stadium, outside the stadium, welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like, please reach out to me on Instagram at elliot.t.waters and let me know if you have started listening because of the posters. Because a few people have done that. They've said, I saw your poster on whatever street, in Newcastle and I've subscribed and I've started listening. I'm so glad I did. And it's the feedback. It's amazing feedback. And I'm so grateful that people would take the time out to first off listen to the show, but then also, message me and, say such kind things. But it is good to hear from people that have discovered the show through the posters because a lot of effort goes into making these posters and laminating them all. Like I'm telling you guys, like I've got A4 sheets, I've got A3 sheets, I've got posters that give a bit of an outline of what the show's all about. So that's more for, areas where people might be walking their dog, for example. I might stop and just have a quick read and go, oh, that's something I'd like to listen to. But then I've got other posters as well, which is just the logo of the podcast and the name of the podcast in big writing, and underneath that says Mental Health Insights. So, there's a few different designs there. There's different sizes of the posters. I laminate all of them. A lot of time and effort goes into these posters. So if you are somebody who has listened because of one of these many, many pieces of paper that I've stuck up all around Newey, well, feel free to let me know. That would be really good. But to get back on topic, and I am going to wrap this up shortly because the voice is declining at a rapid rate. But I don't know I don't think I'm going to be able to make the game today. And it's really, I don't know, I feel like I can't win. Like if I go, I could get overwhelmed, but I do know even if I'm overwhelmed, there'll still be that satisfaction and I'll get the enjoyment out of going, but then I'll also get that satisfaction of pushing back against my mental illnesses. But if I stay at home and watch it on TV, well then, I'm playing it safe and I won't be as overstimulated and I might be able to do more this afternoon, for example, after the game if I don't go. But then I'm emboldening and empowering not myself, but these mental illnesses, in particular, the social anxiety disorder or the social anxiety component of, I guess, my autism. So, it's a difficult one. The best way forward is to go to the game. I just don't know if I can. I don't know. If I do go to the game, I will definitely report back and let you know. I've done an episode, actually, it was probably a year or two ago, I think now. It's called Tackling Social Anxiety Pride of the Hunter, or Pride of the Hunter, Tackling Social Anxiety. And that episode is exactly the episode that I hope I might be able to do this afternoon, which is after going to the game despite feeling the feelings that I am experiencing. So it's that episode is about me overcoming my social anxiety tendencies and getting to the game and giving it my all. And I don't know, I suppose that's a good episode. So if you want to listen to that, feel free. It's a cracker like they all are. But I would like to hope that maybe I'll do almost a carbon copy of that episode again here today. That would be amazing. But I don't know, guys. I don't know. It's been a big week. It's been a big, big week. I've got more to talk about what's happened this week. There's been some really exciting developments, I guess, in my, sort of professional career. I'm not going to go into too much just now, but we know that there's been complications with my work at Bunnings with the forklift operating, but my work at the university and in research, that stuff has been going really good, and I've got some great news to report on that as well. So stay tuned. But that's all for now. I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to go get some warm tea, and I don't know. I used to use a humidifier in my room. When I first started the podcast, in my little room where I used to live, I had this humidifier because supposedly singers and, I don't know, public speakers do this before they present or go on stage or whatever. Excuse me. Jeez. Sorry, everybody. So I had one of these humidifiers because obviously, I present. I'm a public speaker for the Black Dog Institute, and I have this podcast, which involves using my voice as well. So, it was an investment that I thought might help, but I didn't really notice much difference. But it could be these sorts of situations where it would have come in handy because according to ChatGPT, I should have a humidifier. So I don't know, maybe I'll go get another one at some point. But anyway, that'll do. I'm going to stop waffling on now. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, I do appreciate it. If you're enjoying the show, feel free to like, subscribe, give the show a great rating because it's good for the algorithm, and you can share it around with your mates, and you can follow me on Instagram at elliot.t.waters, and you can also follow the show on Facebook by searching The Dysregulated Podcast. All right, until next time, thank you guys. Have a good one. See you later.